changed. You know, I was supposed to go first. Marco goes first, and are there any protesters left? Come on. If there's anybody left, we could start with the protest and just get it out of the way. In fact, if there's a protester left in the room, I'll take the first question right now from the room. Disappointing. I think there are some big issues that go beyond maybe some of the superficial issues of the day. One of the issues that I think is a big and recurring issue, and occurred to our founding fathers, and really has occurred to civilized men and women probably since the beginning of time, and that is, are liberty and virtue mutually exclusive? Are they incompatible? Can you have one without the other? Can you have liberty without virtue? Now, Washington didn't seem to think so, and most of our framers didn't seem to think so. Washington said, in fact, that democracy requires a virtuous people. Ronald Reagan would agree with him. Ronald Reagan said that freedom and faith are so intertwined that you should never attempt to decouple them. A friend of mine, Don Devine, who was in the Reagan administration, wrote a book called America's Way Back. And he said that the great achievement of our framers was that they synthesized freedom and tradition. He said that freedom requires tradition for law and order, for inspiration. But the tradition requires freedom to escape stagnation, to escape coercion and decline. But really, you have to have a dose of both. That one without the other isn't something that we strive for. When I think of how do we compare different ways of mixing liberty and virtue, I think of how different the American Revolution was from the French Revolution. In the American Revolution, we threw off the yoke of the king, but we kept our religious bearing. Some people will say, and this is a perfect gotcha question of the media, are we a Christian nation? Well, we were founded by people that were predominantly Christian, and people that were predominantly religious, and kept their religion as part of their tradition. We also kept the democratic representation. We kept the House of Burgess had been going on 150 years. So when we had our revolution, we were remarkably lucky that it turned out as well as it did. But I think part of it is we sought more freedom, but we didn't give up on our traditions. We didn't give up on believing that we had to have a virtuous nation, that there had to be an underpinning or an undergirding coming from something beyond us. That we believed that our rights actually came from God and couldn't be taken away. I ask the kids that come to Washington every week, the ones I'll take a picture with, I have like 5 minutes with them on the steps of the Capitol, and I'll say, are we a republic or a democracy? And they get it right about half the time, which, you know, we could improve some of our education. But the thing is that it's an important question, because if you believe in a constitutional republic, you believe that our rights come naturally from God, and that a majority shouldn't take them away from us. Os Guinness is a theologian, and he talks about, in a book that I highly recommend, The Suicide of a Free People, he talks about how liberty requires restraint, but the only restraint consistent with liberty is self-restraint. That you have to voluntarily, so it's sort of like the question, can government save you? Nobody in the room believes that. Can government perfect your life? Can government be the end all? The reason I ask these questions is so often I meet with pastors and ministers, and they're looking to government for the answers, and I look back at them and I'm saying, I'm looking to you for help. The thing is what's the #1 linkage of a problem to poverty in our country? And we say, well, poverty is a public policy. We should do something publicly to fix poverty. The #1 link is having kids without being married. But I can't make you get married, all right? I can't do that. The government can't do it. But it doesn't mean someone shouldn't say that it's appropriate and necessary and that it's important. So it really needs to be a combination. It needs to be both a combination of a religious people, people in government who are religious, pastors. It needs to be a combination of all of the above, and there's not nearly enough. We had the shooting this morning in South Carolina. What kind of person goes in a church and shoots 9 people? There's a sickness in our country. There's something terribly wrong, but it isn't going to be fixed by your government. It's people straying away. It's people not understanding where salvation comes from. And I think that if we understand that, we'll understand and have better expectations of what we get from our government. But I'll give you an understanding, or maybe a little bit, of how I feel let down sometimes by my government. I spent most of my life as a physician. I trained for 10 years, practiced for 20 years, and still consider it to be my primary role in life is that I'm going to continue doing surgery. I'll do surgery on Friday for people who don't have insurance in Paducah, Kentucky. I'll be in Haiti during August doing surgery. So it's what I want to do, and it's a talent that I think I have that I can give back.